Hey everyone, James Reeves, TFB TV. Today it is my honor, my privilege to have Mr. Ron Cohen, the CEO of Sig Sauer, on the program. Ron, let's start with a softball question. What is the best gun Sig Sauer has ever made?
I have 4 kids. If you'd ask me which kid I love the most, I'd be in trouble. You know, they say you love the kid that needs you the most today. So I think it's some days I'm in love with a 226, others with a 320, then the 365, then a long gun, a spear, an MCX. It's just too much to choose from. So
Ron, don't lie to me. You may know what a Rorschach test is. You know, an ink blot test. When I asked you that question, something popped into your mind. What was it?
Today it's the 365 Fuse because it just blew me away to hold it in my hand and feel so happy about it. I loved it today.
Talk to me about the 365.
Yeah.
When the 365 was conceptualized, did you look at it and say, this is going to be a big deal? Did you know it was going to be what it was?
I was sure it will revolutionize the industry. It was clear to me that for the first time, you could avoid the problem of a small gun in 2 ways. You have enough capacity and you can shoot it. And that was a big barrier for small guns. That broke it. It's a gun that keeps amazing us, how it breaks the boundaries between the categories, small, medium, big, and how it allows you to have ammunition, to have shootability, to conceal. How does it tick off all these boxes with one platform? It blows us away.
Did you have this roadmap in mind for the 365 whenever you first came out with it, where you said, you know what, we're going to start here, and then next thing we've got the XL or the X or the macro? Or was that something where you waited for the 365, maybe you saw how successful it was and started thinking, look, we need to change things up a bit?
I think it's the latter. When we started, we thought that's the gun. But as you get into it, Sig has incredible people. Each one wants to take it somewhere. And Joe Public basically said, wow, this gun could be so much more. If it had a little more grip, for a bigger hand, a little more slide length and barrel, for those that want more performance. And it just took a life of its own. And what we've shown today with the Fuse is that next level iteration. And we're just in love with what you can do with this product.
Myself, and this is somebody who is a Sacco main Sig, old school West German.
The West German guy.
I go way back with Sig, as we talked about before the camera started rolling.
I had a 228 too, yeah.
I think the P365 is the best gun that you guys have ever made. Am I wrong?
Again, near my bed, most of the time I have a 226 SAO, but then most of the time I carry a 365 macro comp. My kids do that. It's hard to decide. You go to the range, sometimes you want the feel of steel with a 226, but the 365 has so much spectrum. And to think that you could do so much in such a small package, and you could shoot it and have fun with shooting it. It overcame the small gun syndrome of it's hard to shoot.
Where's it going from here? We saw the Fuse today for the first time, so I understand this is terrible timing for this question, because you're going to say, James, you ungrateful son of a bitch, you just saw the brand new one. But where's it going next? Can it go anywhere else?
You know, I got to tell you, I can't see this second where it goes, but I'm surrounded with 3,300 people. 400 of them are engineers. I'm surrounded with 1,200 military and law enforcement folks. There's no doubt that we'll invent 100 other things that will happen here in the next decade. Just like we did with MCX, the knock on Sig is, I bought the MCX and now it's different. I am unabashed by saying we will continue to take every platform that we make and try to make it better and better and more fascinating every year or two We'll continue to do so.
So let's go ahead and tackle that right now. One of the biggest criticisms that we see now, and those of you who are familiar who watch TFB TV, you know that for the most part, only the really, really, really egregious posters do we actually ban because we like getting raw input from our viewers. And when I post a SIG video, people say, I am not going to support a company that uses its customers as beta testers. How do you respond to that?
That terminology, beta tester, comes from the fact that when you launch so much product over a decade, you will always have something that didn't work exactly like you wanted to in the first go. That said and done, when you look at quality of SIG products, we're measured by Special Operations Command, by the military, by Marine Corps, by 80 countries around the world. Top tier operators use SIG. US military is a very hard client to make happy, whether it's a 320, 365, MCX, Spear, suppressors, ammunition, optics. It's all in the hands of the best, and a third of law enforcement in America. So to say that we have a problem there, you know, it's the SIG haters that love to wave that flag.
What I always say is, I hope you're making this comment from an iPhone 4. But to be fair, if you're looking at military, you're looking at law enforcement, these are guys with budgets. You have somebody who's a civilian and maybe they buy the first generation MCX, and now we're on the Rattler LT, which by the way is like one of my most favorite guns of all time. But we're there and they say, oh, well, I feel ripped off because I bought
So I'll tell you a secret. I can't mention the unit, but there's a specific unit in the United States that bought the MCX in 2014-15. They were the first users. That unit has that MCX today, and since then they've bought others, but they're still using the original one. So if we made iPhone 4, MCX1, do you not want us to create an iPhone 6 or 8, more pixels or more camera or more this or more that? We're always going to do that. It doesn't take away from iPhone 4. Some companies like to stay at Gen X or Gen Y, and because they don't want to scare anybody, that's their decision.
Ron, what's your background? Let's talk about what you went to school for.
Engineering.
You started out as a mechanical engineer?
Yeah.
And then what brought you into the gun world?
Well, I think military background has something to do with it too. And I think the blend of the two, I think that kind of linked it. And initially it was military hardware.
How'd you end up at SIG? I think, if I remember correctly, it was about 20 years ago.
It was in 2004. I'm celebrating 20 years at SIG. I think it was one of those cases where I didn't want to do this, and somebody convinced me to come to SIG to look, just to say hi, and to interview. It didn't seem like when I was in the office that I want to do this. But then whoever that person was said, why don't we take a little tour in the factory? And then I smelled the oil, and I saw a 226. And it was like, holy shit, I could be in the company that I admired as a young man. And it's an opportunity to take a brand that to me was the top of the world, and maybe to do something with that brand. It was just, I couldn't say no to it.
In the past 2 decades, you've been at the helm of SIG. What has been your greatest accomplishment, or the company's greatest accomplishment?
You know, I think it's mostly creating a culture of a company that's not afraid to drive really hard, fast, to take on itself assignments that look insane. And not being afraid of the failures on the way. You know, people are usually, they prefer not to take the leap because you may fall. What happens if we fail? We have failed, and you know about our failures over the last 20 years, but we're really good at getting up from the floor and using it as a teaching moment. And what I could tell you, after 20 years, I'm surrounded with exceptional people. That's the most humbling part of my life, to drive home on a Friday night and be so happy of who are my friends, my team. what we are doing today with the US military and how it bleeds over to the consumer side, it's the biggest achievement of our life.
We talk about bumps in the road, improvement. The Sig P320. Confidence has been shaken based on some perceived safety issues. Now again, as an attorney, I understand if you're going to say, look, no comment on any of that, but if you would like to take the opportunity to perhaps address, what's your perception of the P320, where it is today? How do you see this resolving?
This world is surrounded by a lot of vultures that enjoy picking at a company, especially the companies that are on top. Mm-hmm. Everybody loves to try to pick somebody that has a wallet. But asking me what I think about the 320 is asking me about my child. If you look at the last decade or last 5 years, the US military purchased 500,000 of our M17s, M18s. The Canadian military, the Australian military, the Danish military, and I can't even mention how many more federal agencies, law enforcement agencies around the world. Mind you, we operate in 80 countries around the world. Millions of SIGs have been sold around the world to who? To groups that don't trust anybody else. And every time we go to a competition, you send guns to people that are not necessarily your friends. They round up the usual suspects, the companies in the industry, and then they test. They test safety, durability, reliability, and accuracy. Why don't you just go interview them, ask them what they think? The Danish government doesn't care about SIG or HK or FN or Glock. They care about the Danish soldier. The Canadian military doesn't care about anybody else either. They take guns, they don't care what the name is, and they start ticking off their checklist. Every test is meticulously done, and every police department, the United States has, 17,700 police departments. You could go to a town with 11 cops. They want to get a sample of your gun and they'll test it. Some of them throw it off the third floor. Some of them just throw them in the air. Some of them drag them with their pickup truck. The stuff that people do to test our guns is mind-boggling. In the last 5 years, when it's a serious competitor, serious test protocol, we tend to do really, really well. If we lose it, it's not technical and it's not safety. We lose it on price. These guys, their gun is a tool that they use every day. They won't risk their life. They don't care about SIG, they care about themselves, as they should. So if there was an issue, why would they carry it?
How does SIG keep winning these military contracts? I mean, you guys have totally turned the business on its head in terms of government solicitations and contracts. There's got to be some sort of conspiracy. How does SIG keep winning these contracts?
Yeah, a lot of people say that, but the hard facts are really almost not interesting. It's like the people that work at SIG just outwork everybody else. There's a system at SIG of optic people, ammunition people, suppressor people, handgun people, rifle people. There's 100 instructors at SIG Academy. They all have military law enforcement background. There's dozens of product people with military background. There's engineers, 400 engineers, that a lot of them are ex-military. When you allow these guys to work together and use the word engage, we engage the customer. We will go and knock on the doors and ask and learn and listen. NGSW was a very interesting process where you develop something and you get feedback while you're at it. We listened, even though I would argue our people may know more than some of the soldiers telling us what to do because they have more time in the system. We don't have the arrogance of saying, this is what you're going to need. We listen, counter to a lot of companies that are driven by what they think is right. We tend to be a little more willing to listen and to adapt. And when you put all that energy at SIG together with a willingness to work hard, engage, listen, good things happen. We don't win everything, but we've been winning key systems that will change small arms in the military, and it will bleed over into the consumer side. We're very excited about this new direction of next gen.
Ron, I've asked you some difficult questions, and I think it would be appropriate to conclude perhaps with the toughest question. Best gun by a manufacturer that is not SIG.
I haven't seen anything in the last 5-10 years that blows me away. I look at the 240 by FN, an incredible gun. I look at an MP5 by HK. I love those guns. So those guns are the guns that shaped my youth, or my, I'd say, adult age. And those are the guns that I loved. And I'm happy to be in a position that we could maybe knock off my childhood heroes.
You've accomplished a lot over the past 20 years. Again, revolutionized the military side, especially with the adoption of NGSW, with the 320 being adopted. If you could accomplish one more thing in the next 10 years, anything, what would that be for Sig Sauer?
Whoa, that's a tough one. I need like a week to prepare for that. Look, I think on one hand, I want to strengthen SIG on both ends, the consumer and the professional. And on the other hand, I'm looking at threats of US military and our NATO allies in the next decade, and drones scare me. I'm gonna dedicate a lot of time to be able to be part of the solution to take down drones. You saw today a demonstration with our remote weapon station that has two functions. One, protects the soldier, and second, stabilizes the system in the various environments that you're in. Imagine that now that's able to track an incoming drone and take it down. That will require evolution of software, optics, ammunition, all of the things that SIG is good at with the tenacity of the company. So I think we could do a lot to help our soldiers.
Now you're talking about drone defense, and of course I agree with you that I feel like the landscape of warfare as we know it has changed as we sit here today based on what we've seen in the Ukraine conflict. Has there been any thought about maybe offensively employing drones, using that as maybe the next level for SIG?
Again, I cannot mention names of customers, but there are customers that we're working on currently to be able to turn drones, not just data collection, but ISR drones, into kinetic drones. In an infantry environment where you want to be selective at what you're doing, i.e. connect a handgun, a rifle, and maybe a machine gun to a drone. So we're working it direct with customers and with partners on it. So we're going to work both sides of the drone revolution, and it's going to be fascinating.
Before we go, what gun, I know it's a SIG, 365 probably, are you carrying every day?
It's up till today, it was the macro comp. Now I have to reconsider what to do.
Because of the fuse?
Because I think the fuse is a milestone that will change what 365 is perceived to be. It will change it. Just like you asked me about 2018, did I feel that it's going to change? I felt that it's going to change. The fuse will do the same. It really is magical.
Well, Ron, I think many people would say the same thing about you and about your leadership here at SIG and about the path that you've dictated for SIG. So I want to say congratulations.
Thank you.
And thank you so much again. It's our honor and our privilege to have you on TFB TV. Guys, thanks as usual for tuning in. Stay tuned. We're bringing you more from SIG NEXT. Make sure to like, subscribe. Take care.